So hi everyone. So let's start. So we are going to talk about the India's economy, some contemporary perspective, and in this particular course we were talking about the financial sector, and we were in the financial FS for Financial Sector Legislative Reform Commission, and we had given some background about that particular commission report. And it all also mentioned about how we can understand better about the newly suggested Indian Financial Code IFC code, because it is important to understand. And then going ahead in this particular lecture we will be also going through some recent developments in the India's financial sector. Basically the India banking crisis, what led to and what were the reasons. So now we will not be exploring much towards the textbooks and the reports, but we will be more relying on the economic survey. So now it is more like contemporary context. We will be talking more about the recent developments, recent changes. So in this process I have designed this particular lecture in the form of going through the FSLRC recommendations, how this particular recommendation has helped in terms of improving the financial structure of the country. So under this I have referred Patnaik and Shah. It was also in the last lecture, reforming India's financial system. And then we also mentioned about the economic reforms that we were talking about. So economic reform, we also mentioned about the financial sector reform. So under this we had a economic survey 2016-17 and 2017-18 we have referred. So in this I have referred Patnaik and Shah, reforming India's financial system. So I have referred the Carnegie Endowment International Peace. This particular report mentions about the Commission's recommendations in Indian Financial Code. And then the most relevant is the economic survey 2016-17, 2017-18, and I would also refer to for some portions basically on the bankruptcy law, economic survey 2018-19, and mostly these are from the volume 1 and volume 2 both. So wherever applicable I will be highlighting those things. So as of now these two are the major references that we will be talking about. So the objective is the same, to understand the India's banking system and further the financial sector reforms and the recent developments and financial sector whatever we have implemented some regulations. So that's the underlying idea. So as I have given the background that Indian Financial Code, for the first time Sri Krishna Committee report, which was set up in 2011 and submitted the report in 2013, it is the first after independence the I would say gigantic reforms process that the committee has recommended at every level. So even we have the micro prudential norms to revise the existing financial laws. So keeping that in mind, we will going through. So we have already gone through something called consumer protection. So what happens under consumer protection? So for the first time the IFC code has recommended that there will be some kind of regulatory body set up at the district level, so that the consumers living in the semi urban and even the rural areas, they will have some kind of redressal process to have and to solve the financial concerns in case of any kind of dispute that happens between the financial firm and the consumer. Then it talks about the micro prudential regulation. It also talks about the resolution, systemic risk regulation, capital controls, monetary policy, public debt management, development and redistribution, contracts trading and market. For the sake of simplification, this particular report, because it is so huge to read and it is very difficult to comprehend each and every portions of the report. So for the sake of simple understanding, this report has been divided into 9 subsections, and I should be thankful to Dr. Patnaik and Shah for mentioning these reports in such a nice manner. So the report that I have mentioned, it is this, the reference, the Reforming India's financial system. So, it is available online freely, and some of you, if you are interested, you can refer that. Let us talk about the micro prudential regulation. So, for the first time IFC code has taken into account the role of the micro prudential. So, normally in most of the countries what we see is that we have the macro prudential norms. So, under macro prudential norm, what typically happens is that you look from the perspective of the economy as a whole. So, suppose we have the banking system and we have the financial market, and we expect that there will be some shock penetrating to either the banking sector or the financial sector, and it may happen that there will be collapse of one or more than one institution. So, you safeguard certain norms or you implement certain norms to make sure that such things do not happen, and as a result your at the time of any unwanted events your economy is saved, and even your sectors which are crucial for the economic growth and development are also safeguarded. So, this is called the macro prudential norm. So, under that there will be early warning signals, then there will be data repository to analyze what are the patterns and what are the patterns and developments in terms of certain sectoral developments. For example, how financial sector is expanding towards the masses which are unbanked. So, that becomes quite risky, because there the hard earned money of a small investor will also be mobilized by the financial sector, and if financial sector is not robust enough to avoid those external shocks, then it may happen that in the event of financial crisis or the global crisis, global economic crisis that we saw during 2007-8, it may lead to have a spillover effect on rest of the sectors, and as a result the economic growth process may turn back and it may backfire in terms of going for persistent low inflation and low growth for a longer period of time. So, there is a whole lot of literature talking about these things, but at the same time there is a need to think about the macro prudential in the sense that there will be some kind of norms devised by the central regulatory body, so that if the firm is going to bankrupt and if it is reporting losses, then there will be some safeguard or checks imposed on that firm, so that it does not go into the CIRP process, that is called corporate insolvency resolution process, and it remains solvent, and then the regulators may go for either merger or it can sell to some other well doing firms. It can also recommend some kind of restructuring mechanism through which this particular firm can be survived. So, in case of government institutions, it typically happens that government institutions are more or less more safeguarded. So, people have a blind faith on that, and that is why they do not find it difficult to mobilize savings for or to go for any kind of borrowing and lending, because if you are individual and if you are investing in government institution, then you always think that you are going to lend money to the government and government will not default. So, it is like a risk free asset. But in case of private firms, this is not the case, because there is a common apprehension that after some years if the firm will not do well, then this particular firm may fail and it may lead to a heavy losses. So, people do not recommend those, I would say, private firms investment as compared to the government firm. So, that is why there is a need to bring some kind of macro prudential regulation, so that these firms may also be safeguarded, and at the same time these firms will also have the access to a similar set of market which the government institutions are. So, basically the role of macro prudential regulation is that whatever apprehension that we have about the private firms, and now since we are looking for a market oriented economy, so it is obvious that there will be a penetration of private firms, and if there are no safeguards designed for these firms, then in case of any adverse event these firms may become vulnerable to failure or bankruptcy. As a result, there will be panic among the investors, those who have invested money. So, for the first time at this level, a particular commission has thought about that we should have a institution wise prudential norms through which we can monitor these institutions, and in case of any unwanted event, these institutions can also be safeguarded. For instance, it typically happens that if a bank is going through a failure, then under some guaranteed scheme, there is a insurance of at least 1 lakh rupees that is paid to the depositor. In the same way, if you have a mutual fund and mutual fund is going for having or going for reporting of higher net asset value NAVs, and if this is not the case, and if there is some kind of misreporting happening, and if there is some kind of adverse effect on this mutual fund, then this may lead to create some kind of negative impact on the investment of the borrower, investment of the savers, and as a result, if the government and if there are no rules to take care of such norms, then it may happen that after some point of time people may not like to invest in mutual funds which are mostly privately owned, or they may again go to post office savings and they may start going through the conventional products. So, as a result, there will be not much scope for diversification in the financial sector, and one of the important parts of the financial sector expansion or the reform process is that it should expand, it should give the more number of choices to the investors so that they can invest in a large number of products. So, portfolio diversification, risk diversification strategy should be easily adopted. So, under IFC, Indian Financial Code, for the first time the commission has recommended that depending upon the nature of the business, how risky it is, authorities will be empowered to regulate those and to devise or to undertake measures to make sure that the firms operating in that particular sector do not have the cases of bankruptcy. So, for instance, if there are NBFCs, then capital adequacy norms may be higher. I can give you one example that in case of under Basel II, we have the capital adequacy ratio of 9%. If the regulator thinks that this particular sector requires more safeguard, then they can put a higher check and they can say that the capital adequacy norm for that particular sector may be 11%, 12% or so. So, that is required. Corporate governance standard, because this has been the case that when early 2000 and in the late 1990s, when we had the boom in the NBFC sector where there was large mobilization of savings coming from NBFCs, at that time there were cases of corporate governance norms. So, regulatory bodies should have a particular check on that particular sector where it feels that there is a need to have a different set of board composition, the mixture of a particular sector concentration plus the individuals from related sector or other sector. Investment norms can also be devised in the same way that there should be a limit of investment, that if a particular sector is not able to absorb a higher liquidity, then they can devise that there should not be investment of more than 50,000 in a year or something or so. So, there can be checks and balances. Other instruments means if it is a commodity market and if you feel that this particular commodity market is very sensitive to the inflation, then government can devise certain norms that particular set of commodities may not be traded. In the same way, if we are looking for the foreign exchange market, then foreign exchange market may also be, but the macroprudential norms are basically devised to safeguard the interests of consumers. So, or consumers or investors. So, if the financial institutions are being monitored on a very based on their size, based on their market share, based on their sensitivity to the macroeconomic fundamentals, then of course it will lead to and it will bring more stability into the system. So, for the first time IFC had gone for that. There is also a special emphasis of not overburdening private firms, and commission recommends certain proportionality in the sense that there should be some breathing space given to these sectors. For example, I gave you the example of mutual fund. If the mutual funds are not giving proper space to grow, and if there are more checks and safeguards, then ultimately this will lead to the deterioration in the market of the mutual funds, and they may not be able to survive for so long. So, some kind of proportionality must be adopted so that we can either risk profile of these institutions may be measured on certain parameters, and those measurements may become a yardstick to avoid certain risk and measures. According to IFC, the regulatory intervention should be proportional to the risk phase that I mentioned about. Under the IFC, all of these institutions are governed by a single macroprudential law that would ensure uniform treatment of all aspects of the financial sector, which means that there is a recommendation that there should be a macroprudential laws dealing with all types of all types of firms participating in the financial space of the country. So for the first time, the appreciation is that for the first time committee has gone and thought about such kind of framework. Then after this, the next issue is the resolution. Suppose there is a bank and there is consumer and both have some kind of dispute, then some kind of understanding must be there. So in this case, the resolution process basically takes into account that if there are cases of failures in the firm, and if the regulator thinks that this particular failure may not have that much impact and it will lead to transfer of resources. So for example, if the sick firm or the weak firm is going to go for bankrupt, then in certain cases may be allowed, because this will free up the capital and the resources for the other firms, and they may utilize to augment their efficiency, and this will bring ultimately the efficiency into the overall system. So keeping that in mind, this resolution process has been devised. So it has been recommended under IFC that there will be a resolution corporation under IFC to overlook at the service entities which have made significant promises to household, which means that if you have one particular institutions, for example insurance, suppose for example a firm operating in insurance industry, this particular firm sells product to the households, and households have been given promise that they will be given certain incentives after some years, and again there will be further compounding of those incentives. And so whatever product has been sold to the households, if the firm is not complying with those promises, then it may lead to further deterioration of the market, and there will be low sentiment in the investment of the investment in the insurance industry, and that may have adverse impact on the growth and development of the insurance industry as a whole. So keeping that in mind, IFC recommends that there should be a particular body to look into these things, where the firms are over promising things to the customers and they are not able to deliver. So there must be some kind of regulatory check on such type of incidences. So the list of entities in this include banks, insurance companies, then we have pension funds and even payment platforms. So for the first time, Indian Financial Code had gone to an extent that whatever changes, suppose if somebody has a cashback from Amazon or Flipkart, and if it is not being monitored, and if the firm has not been able to deliver, then there will be some kind of a regulatory check on those violations, so that in future it should not happen. And as a result, the smaller investors which are the first timers and utilizing such type of services for the first time, their interests are safeguarded, and this will ultimately benefit the financial each and every segment of the financial sector. So this is not the only case in case of India. It has been devised in each and every country. So they have a check and balances at each level, so that even the smaller investor feels that it cannot be the case that firm can cheat them. So that's the way they go for sorting out some kind of differences between consumer and firm and come up with some resolution. So this resolution corporation will protect the interest of consumers, basically the investors or buyers or any kind of, by restricting the firms through sales and merger. So in case it happens that there is a particular firm, and this particular firm after some point of time it has been sold to some other firm, and whatever the contracts or the clauses that were there in the consumer service document, now it has to be changed, it has to be revised. Ultimately the loser is the consumer. So that should not be the case. Even in terms of sales, if you are selling certain product and if this product is coming under some kind of controversy, so a regulatory body may put those products for review, and may ask may ask for suggestions so that this product service may be improved. So those situations, those conditions are also being minutely dealt and explained here in case of resolution. Then what comes the systemic risk regulation. Systemic risk regulation is very important, but it is important for those economies where the banks are completely left to the market. Government or the central bank does not have the, or even the government and the central bank do not have that much control on that. But in case of India, in most of the cases what we find that we have the regulated banking system, and this regulated banking system, it is being assumed that if the banks are going to face any problem, then government will come to rescue them, and as a result what happens is that there will be a lot of inefficiencies coming into the system in the form of higher NPAs and also higher defaults, and there will be some kind of mismanagement, financial mismanagement, that may lead to further inefficiency into the banking system. And then after some point of time, whenever there will be a spillover on sectors, real economic activities, and this creates some kind of shock that we have seen in case of 2007-8 global financial crisis that happened in US. But systemic risk in case of regulated banking system cannot be ignored, because this is one particular framework that has now become binding norms for most of the central banks, even the governments, to adopt certain structures of checking banks regularly for their financial health, and also checking these banks from the perspective that how long they have the sufficient cushion to survive in case there is some kind of adverse shock coming from US or the external sectors, then how the banking and other financial segments of the system are safeguarded. So systemic risk basically talks about the failure or the risk spillover due to failure of one large institutions or highly systemically important institution. Systemically important institutions, that those institutions which have the larger coverage in terms of activities, and these institutions are also one of the prime lenders to businesses and real activities, and if these institutions fail, then this will have the collapse of, or I would say collapsing effect on the other segments of the economy, including the real economic activities. So addressing systemic risk requires a bird's eye view, which means that a central bank or the authority should have a particular check on this, that how they can devise about, I would say, mechanism through which they can regulate such type of systemic shocks, spread of such type of systemic shocks. So Indian Financial Code is having some kind of mechanism designed. So how they have designed? They have mentioned that there will be creation of comprehensive database about all financial firms and market, which means that there will be a body that will be taking care, and there will be a whole lot of gathering of information, and this database will be utilized for certain signaling mechanism through which it can be propagated where the banking sector is heading and how they are heading and what is their financial situations. Identification of systemically important financial firms and conglomerates. If you go to RBI website or even some segments of the RBI website, then you will find that they have the ranking of all major banks, which are called based on their size. So they rank based on their size. So for example, State Bank of India, then right now it is HDFC Bank, then you have the ICICI Bank, State Bank of India, then Axis Bank. So these are the four major banks that we have in India, and it has been ranked by RBI based on their size and the coverage that they have, and if these banks face any problem, then this will have tremendous impact on the other segments of the financial sector, real economic activities. The shock trigger will be so impactful that it will be really difficult to subside those shocks or even to monitor those shocks on a regular basis. Even in India, we have a DSIBs, it is called DSIB, D-SIB, systemically important banks. So these banks are given a ranking based on their size. Similarly, we have the SINBFCs, systemically important non-banking financial corporations, and these corporations play a very important role in terms of knowing at least that which all NBFCs are critical for the the safeguards of development. Then we have the development of mechanisms and tools to identify risk across financial system and across all sector, which means that once we have the database, once we have the rankings, then we can easily see the integration, the kind of development, the transmission of information, some kind of analysis that gives us idea about how we can see the interdependence or some kind of contagion analysis that we can process. The development of coordinated emergency measures in the event of adverse shock, which means that some kind of measures must be taken to make sure that if a banking sector is going to face a problem, then the financial sector may be safeguarded by just getting into some other activities that has a low dependence. So, some kind of diversification may be possible. To monitor all this, the regulatory body which has been suggested is called Financial Stability and Development Council, FSDC. I will be giving you the background of this in a later section, and this is one important aspect that we have. So, the FSDC, the body, this IFC in Indian Financial Court suggests in this way that Finance Minister will be the member, RBI Governor will be also the member of this, head of non-banking financial agency. For example, we have the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India. So, the head of Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India may become the member of this, head of Resolution Corporation, which the IFC suggests, and the head of Debt Management Office that is going to come after this. So, the Indian Financial Court suggests that there should be the formation of Financial Stability and Development Council, and this will have these members. Then we have the capital control. As we are expanding and our economy is now having almost like expanded the structure where we have the well diversified financial system, but at the same time we have to look from the perspective of capital inflow outflow, which means the cross border border inflows outflows and how we can think about. So, in this setup I will be continuing from here in terms of capital control. So far we have covered the FSLRC committee recommendation, the Indian Financial Code, and we have referred to some extent the major portions of the. So, we are going through the sub components, the major recommendations, and under that now we are discussing. So, in the next session I will be talking about the capital control in detail. So, thank you so much.